Much for joining us for the Masters of Science in Sport and Performance Psychology virtual information session. My name is Tom Kresh. I'm our director for graduate admissions, and I'll be the co-host for tonight. This event should take probably around 45 minutes. Dr. Lally has a great presentation prepared that gives you some, an oversight of the program, gives you some details of what it's like to be a student, and then we're going to open it up to a Q&A afterwards. This event is being recorded, and the recording will be available on demand probably a couple days after the live portion is over. But before we go any further, Dr. Lally, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. So I am actually, if you were here just before we started recording, I'm actually Canadian, but I have lived here in the US for about 25 years. I am the director of the graduate program, and I actually started the grad program when I first came to Lock Haven. So I don't know, it's about 15 years old, I think, at this point. And I've served as the graduate program director for about 10 years and then stepped away for a couple of years, and then I'm back in the role now. I have an undergrad degree in psychology from McGill University, a master's degree in human kinetics with a focus on sport and exercise psychology from the University of Ottawa, and then a PhD in postdoc from the University of Toronto. And so I'm going to tell you about our program tonight and then answer any questions you have afterwards.
And Dr. Lally, if you don't mind me asking, what are your areas of research or area of interest? Anything else you wanted to add there?
Yeah, so I most of my research focuses on two areas, so athletic retirement and athletic identity, and then also the intersection between those two. So what happens when athletes retire in terms of their identity and their transition out of sport. In addition to my professor role and my grad program director role, so all those administrative tasks, I also work as an applied sport and performance psychology consultant and work with athletes at the high school, college, professional level. And I've also worked with some Olympic athletes over the years, just a small number. There's not that many of them. And I also have three kids, all of whom are athletes. And my oldest daughter played volleyball at Penn State and was on the national championship team that won the national championship last year.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah,
That
yeah.
is
So,
awesome.
so professional experience and firsthand experience as well. And I also am a marathon distance runner, and I've run, I think, 18 marathons.
Holy cow, 18.
Yeah,
So
I don't know if you knew
marathons,
that. About
26 miles, is that?
26.2.
Holy cow. Yeah, that's I get tired
Yeah,
driving 26
yeah.
miles.
The point two really matters when you're at the end.
Yeah, honestly,
Yeah,
that's probably the hardest part of the
yeah,
race is that point two at the very end. Yeah.
yes, yes,
All right.
yeah.
Thank you very much. So we can go ahead and kick off the presentation. So Dr. Lally, probably the biggest and most important question is why would someone want to do our Masters of Science in Sport and Performance Psychology?
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about this. I know we're gonna talk about credits and classes and everything in a minute, but I think the way I'd like to address this is in terms of career plans. I talk to a lot of students who are interested in sport and performance psychology and are trying to decide if this is the right path for them. A lot will be, looking also at counseling or going kind of a clinical psychology route. And so, if you look at what the day to day job of the sport and performance psychology consultant is, they're really working with athletes and other performers on achieving a high level of performance. They might be working on things like confidence and goal setting, motivation, concentration and attention, injury in terms of injury prevention and dealing with the psychology of injury once they are injured. And so they're really working with a high performing group already, trying to help them excel and then excel on a consistent basis. There's certainly a lot of overlap in terms of sport performance or performance in a achievement domain and mental health. I think those two are really closely related, but they are also distinct fields. I really do think a lot of the strategies and skills we would teach on the sport and performance psychology side will enhance an athlete or performer's mental health. But someone who's really interested in working in mental health, and the two most common that we see are depression and anxiety, this program is not necessarily designed to train you to do that. It is designed to train you to recognize when someone you're working with may need the help of a clinician, and then to refer accordingly. But if your passion is to work with athletes and other performers and really helping them achieve their athletic goals, then this is a really good fit from an academic perspective.
Yeah, no, that is a great point. And really, you're looking at some really big fields here. So you're looking at athletics, you're looking at mental health, you're looking at
Mhm.
performance. These are huge fields that have grown exponentially over the last 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And a program like this is kind of like the keystone, that connects a lot of these different, very large and fruitful fields. So certainly very, very important time in this field. Could you walk
So
us through the mission?
those
Sorry,
Oh,
go
I
ahead.
was I was gonna I was gonna say those of you who are looking at this as a career will have probably already recognized that while sport and performance psychology was really applied to sport at the outset, it's expanded to a lot of different fields. So we see the application of those principles to business environments, to military environments, to other performing domains where there's a high amount of pressure. So let's say to surgical situations where someone's really having to focus and concentrate for long periods of time. So its origin was really within the sport domain, but it's really have a much broader application today.
That is fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I'm sure that's just one example. I'm sure there's plenty of other ones as
yeah,
well.
yeah. So speaking to the mission, I think you were going to ask me. So
Yes.
our goal is really primarily twofold. One is to really prepare students in terms of the academic side of training in the field. So what are the primary theories? What is the research supporting those theories? Where's the research today? What still remains to be asked and answered? We have a lot of students in the program who will go on and work as sport and performance psychology consultants, so working specifically in their domain. But we also have students coming from other areas. So, for example, we'll have students who are currently coaching and they want to better understand the principles and the theories so that they can become better coaches. They're not necessarily interested in becoming sport and performance psychology consultants. They want to use that information to become better coaches. We see the same in the students in our program who are health and PE or wellness teachers. And so they want all the theory and research so they can become better in their primary role. And the same with athletic training. So they want to better understand the psychology of injury, the psychology of injury prevention, so that they can actually become better in their primary role. So that's one of our main focuses in terms of looking at the academic side in terms of theories, research, where the research is and where it needs to go. But we're also supporting that with focus on the applied work. So, given what we know in terms of the theory and research, how does that translate to working hands on with clients? Whether or not that be an athletic trainer who is then working with injured athletes, how do they apply some of that theory into specific skills in terms of rehab and goal setting in that environment, for example? But then also those working specifically within sport and performance psychology, how are they working with their clients, coaches, athletes, parents, other performers? So if it's in theater or art or music or drama, how are they actually teaching some of those essential skills so that they can perform consistently high across time? Yeah. So those twofold applications.
Yeah, that is great. And then the program values. This is kind of like the tenets that the program has been built on, the tent poles.
Yeah, yeah. So for sure, evidence-based. So one of the questions I get often from coaches if they're saying, well, how do we know that sports psychology works? Well, we want to see an improvement in those areas that we're working on. So it is a field that kind of early on, 20, 30 years ago, was highly popular and didn't have the research support behind it yet. And so, there's been a lot of research in there, a lot of growth in the area. So really providing best practice in terms of the research and evidence-based information. We have an incredibly diverse student population. So we have students who, as I mentioned earlier, are coming from different disciplines. We also have students who are traditional right from their undergrad. In fact, we have an accelerated option where students in their undergrad, in their final year, can start to take grad classes. But we also have a lot of non-traditional learners who are coming back to school. They are either, as I mentioned earlier, supporting their primary role or they're switching gears. So we've had students who have done, job A for 20 years and like, but I've always been passionate about sports psychology. And so, they're coming back. So we have a tremendous diversity in terms of the students in our class. We do have, for example, I just had another meeting with some of the students who are doing their capstone, so their final research project. I think one said she has four kids ranging from 13 to 6. Yeah, so I think of the four who were in the meeting, three were professional athletes, two of them still competing. So the student population is incredibly impressive. And again, we really do have an emphasis on once you leave our program, if your goal is to work in an applied capacity, that we've bridged the gap between the theory and research and the applied work. And in a few slides, we're going to talk about some of the class projects that you have to do, and I think you'll get an idea of how we do that.
Yeah, and one of the things that you mentioned too with the diversity, equity, and inclusion is it sounds like you'll get great diversity of thought, because you're going to get people from all walks of life and people from all parts of the country in different fields at different stages of their career, so they all bring something different that can
Yeah.
provide perspective, and I think it'll produce better professionals in the field as a result of that.
Yeah, and we also have students from all over the world. At one time, we started to track on a U.S. map where students were coming from, and when it first started, it was really kind of the Northeast, and then we expanded further and further west. Now we're expanding into Canada, and then we have international students. So, in fact, one of the students in the last meeting was from Greece. So we
Yeah.
also have a number of international students, which is phenomenal.
Well, word spreads quick when you've built a very successful program, Dr. Lally, and I'm sure you're very proud of this. And I always look at the perspective from the prospective student, where like what we're going to say. The good news is you don't have to take our word for it. I think these types of accolades really speak for themselves. Dr. Lally, do you have anything to add on the success of the program that you've built?
No, because it's hard to talk about that, but not that the program, does so well, only that I was kind of the one who started it. But I will say that we have had tremendous growth in the program. So when we started it, we had kind of one group that started in the fall, and I think now we have two or three groups starting in the fall, one starting in the spring, a smaller number who start in the summer. And I think when we get to kind of the structure of the program, you'll see why that is. But we have seen a tremendous growth in the program, which is really interesting.
Yep, yep, absolutely, absolutely. And then from 10,000 feet, Dr. Lally, if you could give us an
Okay.
overview of the program.
Yeah, okay. So it's 30 credits and it's full-time or part-time option. So if we look at the full-time students, depending on when they start, we can project what classes they'll take when. So all students are assigned an academic advisor. The academic advisor will work with the student to recommend what classes they should take when. We offer all of our required classes at least twice a year. So our full-time students can actually complete the program in one calendar year, which is phenomenal. So some students who finish their undergrad, so those traditional students, they might finish in May their undergrad and start their grad program right away and be done the following May. And then we also have students who attend part-time. And the part-time options vary. So students can take 3 credits, one semester, 6 credits. Sometimes when we have coaches in the program, they'll take one class when they're in season, two classes when they're out of season, or they might not take any classes when they're in season. So the coaches in the group, you know what that can be like. And so they're like, "Am I allowed to take no classes?" We're like, "Yeah." Then you can take classes and pick more up when you're not as busy. We have a lot of teachers in the program who will take one in the fall, maybe one in the winter. So we have a winter offering, which is kind of over the Christmas break. It's a 5-week accelerated course, but a lot of the teachers are off, not that whole time, but a lot of it. Take one in the spring, and then they'll double up and take 2 and 3 in the summer when they're not teaching. So the part-time options really vary based on the needs of the student. So we really do try to respond to the needs of the students. Students can start in the fall, which is our largest group, the spring and the summer. And again, we have all the courses that they would need depending on when they start, so they don't run into an issue of, well, this class isn't offered when I need it. We do have an interdisciplinary faculty. So I have, as I said earlier, my area specifically in sport and performance psychology. We have another faculty member who's specifically sport and performance psychology, is a full-time faculty member. We have a number of faculty who are teaching our research methods course for us, which is great because some of them are coming from an athletic training background, an exercise science background, a biomechanics background. So they are providing some information from those disciplines as well. And then we also have some adjunct faculty, specifically with PhDs, terminal degrees in sport performance psychology, teaching a class in their area of expertise for us. This is a question I get asked a lot. So those of you who are interested in CMPC through ASP, I get asked a lot, do we have all the courses? Yes. Now, I will just preface that with the certification is provided by an outside agency, so the approval does not rest with us. But based on what ASP has said, if the courses have been approved in the past for a student, we anticipate they would be approved in the future. We take that and we say, yes, I mean, these courses have been approved in the past, and we anticipate for our students we'll be able to use those again towards certification. So if you're familiar with the certification, there's K1 through K8, and we offer classes to satisfy each of those content requirements. We do have GAs available. So I actually have a GA this semester. I have two next year, which is awesome. The GA is in our department anyway, does a lot of social media for us and organizes kind of projects that I'm interested in. So for example, I would like to have an alumni panel. I'd like to have some of the students who have participated in our mentoring course, spend some time talking about what that process is like for those who are interested in taking that course. So it's a lot of kind of program development work for the GA and R program, although there are a lot of other GAs available as well. Anyone interested in actually being on a campus, some of those GAs will be in athletics. And so we do have a number of students who are assistant coaches, serving as graduate assistants. So they're actually working with their sport and then attending grad school at the same time. Students can transfer up to 9 credits, which is great. So a 30-credit program, if you're transferring in 9 credits, again, it just accelerates the time from start to finish. Transfer credits have to match a course in our program. So I see a lot of courses in the research methods if you have an existing degree and had a research methods course, and they have to have a B or higher for it to be able to transfer in. You also have to have taken it in the last 6 years, but we do sometimes waive that, if it's a course where you've also been practicing in the area. So for example, if you've taken a ethics and counseling course and we offer an ethics course and you've actively been working in counseling, then we can say, well, your work experience means that you're up to date on that information. One of the things that we do as well is if we have a student who's interested in CMPC certification and they may have existing coursework. So if you're familiar with the certification process, there are 3 categories. So there's K1 through K8. There's 3 of them where ASP will accept undergraduate credits. And then some people have existing master's degree. We'll actually look at your existing credits to be able to say, I think this would count here. I think this would count here. So that when we go to do advising, we can advise you on the best electives to take as well. So I do that for all my advisees if they say they're interested in CMPC.
And I will say also, Dr. Lally, that you had done a great virtual session just on our approach to helping students get prepared for the CMPC certification. So for anyone who's watching live or watching the recording, that's a great thing to do a deeper dive into that subject alone. It's maybe 20 or 30 minutes, but it's very, very helpful. I know we have a lot of people that appreciate that. Yeah. And then the course delivery. I know this is a subject we get asked a lot, whether you're a student who is returning to school after some time, or maybe you did your undergraduate degree at another institution. They're wondering, well, what is the program like? Dr. Ladd, can you walk us through what the course delivery might look like?
Yeah, so it is 100% online. So some students email me and say, are you sure? I'm like, yes, I'm 100% sure. And it's asynchronous. Which means that you don't have to be in front of your computer at any given time to meet a professor or to meet other students, unless there's a partner project, for example. So for some students who are returning to school, getting used to the online delivery is new to them, but I think they adapt very quickly. Most are coming from fields where they're having to be on the computer quite often anyway, using different tools and platforms. So it's maybe a new platform they haven't seen, but they adjust very quickly. I do see a lot of students who are working full time and attending school either full time or part time, so that asynchronous delivery is really phenomenal for them. I also know there's a lot of students in the program, and if you're one listening tonight who have kids, I know that they're submitting their assignments at 11, 12 at night after the kids go to bed, and so for that asynchronous delivery is really important, even for the disciplines that we serve. So if you think about coaches, they may be somewhat free during the day, but then practice in the evening and other commitments in the evening. So they're busy all evening. If we have teachers, they're teaching all day. They might be free in the evening when the coaches are busy. So, and athletic trainers, you guys are, if you're any athletic trainers in the room, you guys are busy from morning to night, maybe with a gap in there when the students you serve are in class. But so we don't really have a population we serve who is available all at the same time. And for that reason, the asynchronous delivery was critical when we started designing the program. And we use a platform called Brightspace, which is, I think it's fairly user friendly. There's, I don't know, it's like any learning system, even if you've had a face-to-face class but had a supplemental online format for your readings and things like that, it'd be fairly familiar to you. It's fairly easy to follow.
Yeah, honestly, I would say if you can, operate an Instagram account or you can, navigate the internet fairly easily, Brightspace
Yeah.
is, just as simple. Dr. Lally, are you able to speak to the online community that's been established within the program? I know, you and I think your grad assistants may even help with this, with helping students kind of go through the program. It's almost this is a team sport almost as students progress through this, and I think that's great given the nature. Can you talk about the online community building?
Yeah, so it's really interesting that I've had students who will tell me that even in our online program, they have more interaction with their classmates and their instructors than they did in their face-to-face undergrad. And that's achieved in a couple of different ways. And so actually, I think the next slide are the sample um, projects. And oh, okay. Well, okay, let me go to the slide for a second. So some of the ways that online community is achieved is through the classwork that you do. And so some of the assignments that you actually have to do on video. And so you have to submit them to me, and so these are some examples from my classes. So you submit them to me, I watch them, and then I give you feedback. And sometimes I'll do video feedback. So you're watching me watch you. But that means that you have a really good connection with your professors in the program. You also have to do, at least in one of my courses, you do an initial consultation with a coach. So you're trying to explain your philosophy as a sport and performance psychology consultant, and try to get the coach to hire you. So you have to do an assessment of their team needs, and then explain what you might do and what that program might look like. And so you could do that with another student in the class, and therefore you're getting to know at least one other student in that class really well. And then we also have a class where you have to work with a student in the class to work on your counseling skills. So again, I said at the outset that we're not training you to be clinical mental health counselors, but we do a lot of work one-on-one, and so we use a lot of those counseling skills. And so you are actually paired with someone in the class, and one of you serves as a mock client, and the other serves as the mock provider. And so you share those roles, and so you get to know a student really well in that format. So I think the online community through some of your class projects, you get to know each other well. A lot of the classes will have group discussions, which everybody has to do. So unlike a class of 30 or 40, or depending on the size of the institution that you were at, 100, 200, 1,000. I remember classes of 700 or 800 at my undergrad institution. There's a lot of times where students can not participate and just listen, but that doesn't happen when you have a group discussion in your class. It's still asynchronous, but you are communicating back and forth. We also have started to do this last year, monthly socials. where students can join through Zoom and faculty hop on and hop off. We don't want to overtake it. We don't want it to be like a question answer unless you need a question answered. But we all join and well, we join I guess at different times, but that allows the students to kind of engage and interact in a social setting. Over the years, I've also said to students, knowing that I'm going to be in an area where some of our students will be, if I'm at a swim meet or a volleyball tournament, to say, hey, I'm going to be I'm trying to think. I didn't see anyone necessarily from York, but we did volleyball tournaments all over PA. So I'll say, hey, I'm going to be here this weekend if anyone's going to be there. So I've also met students in person at different events over the years. So we really do try to have a community where students feel they're connected to their classes and the program as a whole. Available in our Brightspace platform, you'll find your coursework, but there's also a general information shell that has all of the course sequences, course descriptions, information about faculty, any other resources that you might need. I know the students also form group chats about, I think it's class specific and that's totally student initiated, so that they can share information and questions. And because the odd time someone will contact me and say, hey, this came up in the group chat and nobody kind of knew the answer. Do you know the answer to this? Like, yeah, this is the answer. So I do think that if you ask students, they would tell you that they do feel connected to their peers. I think, for example, some of the students attended the Ask conference recently, and I think they got together for dinner one night, and I think we put that up on social, so they were out to dinner together. Yeah, so that's fun.
No, and that is tremendous, and I think
Yeah,
it makes the program experience more enjoyable, knowing that
yeah,
you're going through this as almost as like a team of people.
yeah, yeah.
But I know we skipped through some of the coursework, Dr. Lally.
Yeah.
Would you walk us through some of the required
Yeah.
class?
Okay. So it's 30 credits. We have 21 required credits. So research methods, and some of these are directly linked to the CMPC requirements. So mental health and sport and performance settings, foundations. That's a kind of pure theory research class. Sports psychology for performance enhancement is our most applied class. So bridging the foundations and the application. So, for example, in the foundations class, we might talk about the theories of motivation. And then in the sports psychology for performance enhancement, the applied class, will talk then about goal setting, which is kind of the applied component of motivation. We also have a class in the psychological aspects of injury and recovery. And then again for CMPC, but anyone kind of working in the area, whether or not it's going back to coaching or athletic training, really looking at the ethics and how to function ethically in the field. And then we have a required capstone. The capstone is a 3-credit course. It is a independent research project. It is not equivalent to a thesis. So typically a thesis is a year-long or longer research project. This one is only 1 semester. The students I met with before this meeting tonight, we were all talking about the capstone and what they were interested in doing for the semester. And that is a requirement of our Board of Governors that the grad program have a research component to it. And then we have elective coursework. And I think on the next slide, the elective courses are listed. So all of our required courses, I said earlier, we offer twice a year, either fall and spring or spring and summer. And then our electives, we will offer either twice a year or once a year. So we try to rotate those. We rotate them very specifically. So for example, if you look almost at the bottom, gender and sport, we only offer that once and we offer it in the summer. And the reason for that is we have a lot of students who come into the major, into the grad program with a sport related undergraduate major. So exercise science, biomechanics, ex-phys, sport management. And so they already have a course from their undergrad that's going to satisfy the CMPC requirement. So we don't need to offer that course more than once. And then some of the others we do offer twice a year. The last one, the mentored experience, that course, if you're aware of the certification, it does have a 400-hour supervised mentorship requirement. And this course, you can earn hours towards that 400-hour supervised mentorship. So in addition to all my other roles, I'm also I have CNPC, so I'm certified, and I also hold the status as an approved mentor, so I can oversee the hours because it's a 3 credit class. The university kind of stipulates that 1 credit is equivalent to 40 hours. So to satisfy the credit requirement, you have to complete a minimum of 120 hours, but we do want students to complete as many hours as possible in that course towards the required 400.
Excellent, great. Thank you. And then the career options, which I know this is a very brief and small list, but could you walk us through some of the career options? Again, it's certainly not exhaustive by any means.
Yeah, so I mentioned some earlier. So we do have students who are already in a primary field, so coaching, athletic training, and health and physical education or wellness field, and they're using the sport and performance psychology to supplement and support that primary role. For those who are specifically interested in sport and performance psychology as their career path, a lot of those students will go on and work as a sport and performance psychology consultant. I see increasingly students who are pursuing CMPC. It's not required yet, but many people are pursuing it now. So when I first graduated a long time ago, it didn't even exist. But more and more people are securing CMPC to be able to supplement that role in terms of being a sport and performance psychology consultant. And they're interested in working with athletes and coaches, parents, officials, so primarily within the sport domain, but then some are going on to work in other disciplines. And I'll give you an example. I had a student who actually was a licensed art therapist, but also a former athlete. And so she wanted to be able to work with athletes through art therapy and really wanted the training from the sport and performance psychology to understand the experience, not from just her own high school experience, but through the research and theory. And so she completed our degree and is working as an art therapist, but primarily with a sport and athlete population. A lot of our graduates will go on and work in college athletics, and if it's not primarily as a sport and performance psychology consultant, they're going into work in kind of that support role in athletics. So either academic advising or they're providing wellness programs for student athletes. So that's they're taking the sport performance psychology and the interest in a college athletic role and working in that capacity. We do have a number of students who are interested in working in military settings. And so those of you who have done some research in that area, there is a role within the military called a master resilience training or trainer. And they're actually working in that, like really high performance. I know we talk about sport as being a combat area, but they're going in and working with personnel who are going into combat settings, but also their families and loved ones in terms of managing the stress related to that. So they're going and working specifically in that capacity. So there's and then of course those working in a kind of fitness wellness domain. So there's a broad application, and I think the next slide. I said this before and I was wrong, but I do think the next slide is a list of alumni or a sample anyway, so you can get an idea. I'm not going to read the list off for you, but I'll give you a good idea of where our alumni are going. Yeah, so they're doing some tremendous things, and again, I would say a lot of the students coming into the program are coming with some sport background, not always, but oftentimes, and some of them at really phenomenal level. I mean, we have a lot of Olympic athletes, Olympic coaches, high level college coaches who are coming in, professional athletes who are coming into the program. And so they're bringing their personal experience and then want to supplement that with real understanding from a research and theory perspective.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the list of alumni does a great job of illustrating, again, just some of the options, and it is vast.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
see college athletics, you see just working at a university, you see professional sports, you see, working for in private practice, working for hospitals. I mean, there are so many different ways to leverage this degree in this knowledge, and honestly, it's impressive. It is
Mhm.
extremely impressive. And again, this is we we could have listed more, but we ran out of room on the slide. So our students that graduate are extremely well prepared and go on to have tremendous careers. Um, So hopefully we've given enough information where everyone watching this is like, great, where do I sign up, right? So Dr. Lally, can you walk us through the application process and probably even more importantly, what you're looking for in a qualified applicant?
Okay, so it is an online application, and if there are questions about that, I'm going to defer you to Thomas and his staff, who are phenomenal. We One of the questions you get a lot is, are there specific majors, and do I have to do any pre-qualifying classes? There's only a handful of universities across the country, and I'm going to say five or fewer that actually offer an undergrad degree in the field because it is considered a professional domain. Students are expected to have a minimum of a master's degree to work in the field. And so as a result, that means that I don't think anyone in our program has ever come in with an undergrad in sports psych, maybe a minor, or in a lot of cases, they will have had one or two classes. So the vast majority of our students are coming in with related degrees. So I see a lot of students with degrees from psychology, health and phys ed, athletic training, health science, exercise science, sport administration. I also see a lot of applicants who are coming from what we might consider unrelated degrees, like communications, for example, on the surface may seem unrelated, but they're also having been student athletes. And so they have a lot of experience in sport. So I'm really looking for, in terms of their academic background, where's the connection for them in terms of their undergrad and what they want to do at this grad degree. Not because I'm trying to tease them out, but more because I want to make sure that our program is going to serve their career goals. The minimum requirement is a 3.0 or higher. Again, I am going to brag on the students in our program. I think probably the average, and Thomas, you might correct me, but I'm going to guess the average of students in our program is probably closer to a 3.4, 3.5.
I would say,
Um,
yeah,
we get a lot of applicants, and I will look at them to see, because I have to eventually make a decision of who is accepted
yeah,
from that pool. I look to see, okay, is there anyone that I can let them know right away, like, I'm sorry, you don't meet the requirements. Very rarely do we have someone who doesn't have the 3.0 or higher, and oftentimes they're in that 3.4, 3.5 area. We're looking for two letters of recommendation. Where I find the letters of recommendation are really, really helpful is if a student is borderline. So I'm really not sure, they're let's say they meet the 3.0, but there's just a lot of other students with higher GPAs or and I want to be like, oh, what do their letters say? And the letters might tell us something about the student that's just, okay, this student needs to be in our program. So that's where I find the letters really, really helpful. So if you're looking at who should submit letters for you, make sure that they're able to speak to why you would be a good fit for the program. And then the statement of professional goals, one, I use it as an assessment of your quality of writing. But also, I really want to make sure that our program is going to meet your career goals. So the odd time I have someone who really wants to do it, like really wants to go counseling, like, oh, we don't, that's not us. You're not going to be a licensed counselor at the end of this program. Or they're more exercise physiology, for example. And I'll say, we don't, that's not our focus in our program. So that's really why we want to see that statement of professional goals.
yeah. And Dr. Law, can you speak to the transition into the program for a student whose undergraduate degree is not something that's psychology, right? So for a student, you've got some, tremendous programs listed here. There may be some prospective students saying, man, I haven't taken a lot of behavioral science courses. Am I going to be prepared? Can you walk us through what that process looks like?
Yeah, I think it's fairly straightforward. So we don't require you to go back and take any qualifying courses. And again, I would say the vast majority of students who are coming into our program have a sport background. That's not required, so it's not on that list there. We do have students coming from other areas. For example, we may have a student who is and I'm thinking about some of the students I met with just before this meeting, that they don't have a specifically sport related undergrad. They weren't student athletes, but they're parents of athletes. So, for example, the student I'm thinking right now is actually a pediatric nurse, but she has three kids, two are in their teens. And so she spends a lot of time in sports, and given the expertise she has from being a pediatric nurse, she's observing a whole host of things that she's like, I need to learn more about why this is the case and what I can do about it. Yeah, so I think the transition is fairly straightforward. I think that that social community that is developed in class, I think the faculty, I recognize, I think I don't want to speak for everyone, so I'll speak for myself. I recognize that the students in our program have a million other things on their plate. Um, Being a grad student in a fully online program, I'm not trying to teach you about time management. So I'm very flexible. I understand that if you have a work responsibility or your kid is sick, I understand that those things may sometimes get in the way. So again, that transition, I think, from an academic perspective, if they don't have the psych undergrad, we have students coming from all sorts of different majors, but they're going to understand the language of sport, and what they're putting in is a more theoretical framework. And then I think just the transition part, I think that's facilitated by that community that we've established, and also by the understanding of the faculty that sometimes you just need to be flexible. I'm not teaching someone who's got a full-time job and three kids how to manage their time better by having a like no late assignment policy. So I think the transition is fairly straightforward, but there's definitely the odd student who, for the online format, it's really new to them. But
And I will say, one important thing too is certainly to apply early. I know we'll receive a lot, far more applications versus what we have room for in the spot. So the application process, the best advice I can give you is apply sooner rather than later. If you know this program is on your short list and this is ultimately the destination you'd like to get to, I would definitely apply and get your materials in as quickly as possible.
So I think if you were comparing the previous information session we did last year, maybe Thomas, you can remind me if it was a year ago, to now, I would say that I pretty much reviewed applications as they came in. But we get so many applications now that I'm actually holding applications to be able to take the best applicants rather than being able to respond quickly, which I love to be able to do that for students because it's such a waiting game. One of my daughters is applying to grad schools right now, and she's in that waiting game. And I know that waiting is hard. So I used to, if I got an application that was complete, look at it in the same day and make an admissions decision. But now, given the number of applications we have, we're not doing it quite the same way. So apply early. Yeah.
Things are very important. And that gets us to the end. Here's Dr. Lally's contact information. I am also able to help as much as I can. I don't have any of the subject matter expertise when it comes to applying and things like that. I'm always more than happy to help. But that gets us into the part of the event where we'd love to be able to take any questions that the group may have. I think we already have some in the
I
Q&A.
did see one, so I can answer it. So we do not require the GRE. So I saw that one come up.
Yes,
We
yep, and
we look at your GPA. That's the biggest factor.
And so, Dr. Lally, along that same line, is there anything else that you're looking for in a qualified applicant that may not show up on a transcript? Like, what are some of the things you may be looking for in the statement of professional goals, or any recommendations on who should be writing the letter of recommendation, those types of things?
Yeah, so I will speak to the transcript for a second. If on the transcript, if your GPA is lower, so it meets the minimum requirement, but it's lower, I do look to see, like, well, what was the progression of your GPA over time? Like if your last semester was a 4.0, I might say, well, as a freshman, it was like a 3.0, but I know that you've progressed over time. So I do look at details like that. Um, Someone just had a question about the age of the transcript. No. Particularly if you've been working in that field. So the age of your degree is not really a factor. It does matter for transfer credits. We can't accept anything that's older than 6 years. Now, for certification, they don't have an age limit. So some of the classes, and this is sometimes confusing for students, some of the classes that CMPC will accept towards their course requirements, we can accept to transfer in. But if I think about some of those other aspects, I'm really looking for someone who's thought about why they want to do this degree, who has a good understanding about the difference between clinical counseling path and the sports psychology path. They are closely related, but not the same. So I really want to make sure they know the difference. And I have that conversation with students a lot. The letters, I would say oftentimes if someone hasn't been in school for a long time, they're like, well, who do I get to write my letters? Like, I haven't been in school in 10 years. So who then have someone who can speak to, again, your fit in terms of your career goals. So why does this person want to do it? And speak if you've been working, just your work ethic, your ability to manage multiple tasks at the same time. So that's a question I get a lot, like who should write these? I would say don't have a relative write one. That should be a given, but I do get one of those the odd time. And also I would say if you've applied and it's getting close to the application, like the semester's starting and someone hasn't submitted the letter, on the odd time, we will waive the second letter because we know that you've asked and they haven't submitted yet. Reach out to me and be like, they haven't submitted it yet, and classes start. If you still have seats, is it possible to waive? And I think this semester I waived one because it was a fantastic applicant, had like a really high GPA. The other letter was great and just the other person, for whatever reason, hadn't submitted their letter recommendation. And again, some people who are coming when they've been out working for 10 or 20 years, it's hard for their coworkers then to write a letter or their boss to write a letter. They're also really busy. So we understand life gets in the way at times as well.
Yep, that's great advice. We have a really good question in here. Can you talk about the expectation of time that is expected outside of class? So basically, how much work are people doing outside the time
Yep, I
of
would say for a 3 credit class, plan on 3 hours per week
that
between
makes
reading and assignments and studying.
And we have actually two questions that are somewhat related. One is about we're at Commonwealth University. We have three different campuses: Bloomsburg, Lock Haven, and Mansfield. So the first question is, what office should you send the transcripts to? You would want to send that to our Bloomsburg office. That's where the Office of Graduate Admissions is. And then when submitting the application, which one should you choose? Bloomsburg, Lock Haven, or Mansfield? Honestly, I've never gotten that question before, as crazy
Oh,
as
I
that
do.
might sound.
Yeah,
You do. So, Dr. Lally, do you have a
I do.
recommendation in that instance?
Well, no, it really doesn't matter because they will all come to me. I'm at the Lock Haven campus, but it actually really doesn't matter. You could check all three. You can check any of the three. They're all going to go to the same place, and they're eventually going to come to me when they're complete.
Yeah. Yep,
Ooh,
those are
that's a good
great questions.
question.
Yeah, how many applications do we typically receive? Off the top of my head, I don't recall. I will say it is a lot. Again, off the top of my head, I don't have that information. But again, the acceptance into the program is competitive, and Dr. Lally is looking for top students. I wish I had more details right now handy. But yeah, I think the profile of the student that Dr. Lally has talked about throughout the course of the event would make you a competitive applicant. Around that 3.4, 3.5 is typically the average GPA. The higher, the better. The professional or the statement of professional goals, the letters of rec, all those things are things you're going to look for, Dr. Lally.
And I will say sometimes we do
So
have a student who has a lower GPA, but they've been working in the field for a long time, or a closely related field. We do take that into account as well. I mean, if I'm not going to say, well, your undergrad that was 20 years ago is the only indication that I can use to assess whether or not you're going to be qualified for this program. So I do also look at, what has the person been doing. So
yeah,
that's it's
certainly a
it's a
holistic
benchmark
review.
that we use, but it's not the only benchmark.
How much of the program cost? So that is a great question. One of the tools I would recommend, because there are some different things that could impact that answer, is we have a cost calculator on the SPP, the Sport and Performance Psychology program website, where you can enter in, where you live, the program that you're looking at, and it will give you a breakdown of what it costs per credit. As an in-state student, you are looking at around $753 per credit for 26, 27. As a non-Pennsylvania resident, you are looking at $1,032 um, per credit, and the program is 30 credits in duration. So you can do some multiplication there. But again, that tool is available on the web. It's at the very tippy top. It's a yellow button that says, cost estimator. One of the things that we're really proud of, though, is the ROI, is the value in the degree. I'm confident that you'll get better value in your degree by coming to Commonwealth for your SPP grad program than you would be anywhere else. One of the things that we talk about very frequently is in higher education, the assumption is if you pay more, you must get better quality. And that's simply just not the case. Higher ed is not a traditional consumer item. If you pay $10,000 more for a car, in theory, you're getting a better car. If you pay $10 more for a pair of sneakers, in theory, you're getting a better pair of sneakers. That's not how public higher education works. So you will get outstanding quality of education for your price here at Commonwealth.
I'm going to jump in because someone asked if it was recorded. They have to hop off. Yes, we are recording it, and it'll be available up on the website in a couple days.
There you go. Does the program offer scholarships? Dr. Light, are there any program-specific scholarships?
No, the only program specific funding is the graduate assistantship. And so we have two GAs for next year, and those are 6 credit tuition waivers for the fall and the spring.
Yep. Do you provide a list of approved internship and mentor sites with their supervisors, and can experience be local to the student if they are out of state? Good question.
That's a good question. Okay, so we do not because the certification is provided by an outside agency, so it's provided through ASP. They have a list of approved mentors. So if you go on their website, you can look at the approved mentors, and you can search them by a whole bunch of different identifiers. So you can search geographically, you can search by field. So if they're working in sport or military or business, in sport, you can identify also the specific sport that you can identify by age group. So they actually do provide a database of approved mentors because you have to go through training to be an approved mentor. And then you have to re-up that every 5 years. So we do not. Students can do hours in their geographic region. So if they do it as part of the mentored experience course, which I will say very, very few of our students actually do as part of our program because they need the other electives to satisfy the CMPC course requirements. Most of the students will pursue that 400-hour supervised mentorship after they graduate. But if they do it as part of the course, and that's typically because they're bringing in undergrad, I shouldn't not transferring, but they're using undergraduate credits to satisfy some of the CMPC requirements, then they can do those hours where they're just supervised virtually. And if you're interested, because I don't want to take up the time here, but if you're interested in learning more about that, we did do an information session specifically about the mentored experience that is available on our website.
Can you waive the GPA from the undergrad with the graduate GPA and
Yes.
professional experience?
Yes. So if I have a student whose undergrad GPA was not so great, but then they went and did a grad degree and it was much higher, then yes, for sure. I don't look only at the undergrad. I look at all of it. And if you're a student whose GPA is below the 3.0, then what you can do is, and this is up to you because I think it has a financial aid implication. We will allow you to take up to 6 graduate credits and then consider your undergrad and grad credits together. So let's say you did it a while ago, but it's just too low for me to say like, oh, I just not sure. Because I would never want to admit a student into a program I don't think they're going to be successful because you're just incurring a lot of debt. And if there are any Canadians here, I saw at least one person from Vancouver, you know that the tuition structure here versus Canada is crazy. And so I know tuition is really high. And if I wouldn't want a student to take credits when I didn't think they were going to be successful. So we say, well, listen, take 6 and indicate to us that your GPA now is more reflective of your ability to be successful in the program. Then we take into account the undergrad and grad credits together. So yes.
If you have a graduate degree, can you still get a graduate assistantship?
Sure.
You certainly
Yeah, the
can.
graduate assistantship is aligned to our program, not a previous program.
Let me see. And these are tremendous
Yeah,
questions. One I
yeah.
really wanted to make sure we hit on, Dr. Lally, is we've talked a lot about the CMPC certification. For anyone where this is their introduction into the program, into the field, can you explain why that may be advantageous to have, or why so many people are looking to get that certification?
Yes. Okay. So it is significantly more important to have than it was even say 10 years ago. I think it's important for a couple of reasons. One, it is the industry standard to indicate that you have the qualifications to work as a sport performance psychology consultant. And while our field is closely aligned with mental health, it's not the same as mental health, but those two are closely related. You really need to know what you're doing when you're working with clients. That's number one. So that certification indicates that you've completed the necessary training. I think it's important for consumers to be able to recognize that you have the training. So particularly if you're going to have a private practice where you're trying to get your own clients and work specifically as a consultant, you need to be able to demonstrate that you're capable and good at your job. And I think the CMPC will help with that. I think the other thing is that it's an increasingly competitive field because there is such an emphasis on sport performance and excelling at a high level. Sports psychology has become more and more popular. And we just see more jobs in the area. So it is going to make you more competitive than someone who does not have it. And a lot of job ads, if you're on the Ask website, they have right in the center of their homepage their job center. Go and look at some of the job ads, and you'll see that. And they're not Ask jobs; they're just jobs that they pull that are sports psychology related. And most of them, if not all, will have CMPC either required or preferred.
That is very helpful. I know we do get that
Yeah.
question
So,
quite a
and
bit.
I will also say, because there's so much money involved in sport, that there are a lot of different certifications out there. ASP CMPC certification is the only one that's widely recognized. If you are, whether or not you come to our program, if you are interested in a certification, you want to know, like, is this legitimate or not? If it's not the ASP CMPC, I would say probably not. It's unfortunately just an area where there's a lot of money involved in sport. And so some people have created a certification of their own, but it's not a widely recognized one unless it's the CMPC.
Do you have an estimate of how many class spots are still available for the summer semester? And that's
Summer, yeah, because we've only accepted a handful. There's very few students who start in the summer, so the biggest group starts in the fall, and I think that could be a lot of reasons. And then the next largest group is in the spring, and then the smallest group starts in the summer. I think more than anything, people don't necessarily recognize they can start in the summer. And two, I think undergraduate students say, I just need a little bit of break before I start, or unfortunately, they have to work. So they'll finish their undergrad and work for the summer and then go back to grad school. So it's our smallest group, and so we still have seats for the summer.
great. And we have a student here who wants to know if they are able to set up a virtual meeting
Yeah,
with you, Dr. Lally, later on.
yeah, just
Excellent.
email me.
Great.
And
The
actually, I would say that if a lot of people want to do that, then we can just get a group one together as well. It
oh,
doesn't have to be recorded, or I could just be available to answer questions, but instead of me doing a presentation, if people wanted to do that. But yeah. Yeah, if you're interested, just send me an email. And if I have a bunch, I'll just say, hey, can everybody meet at this time? But
what
yeah,
does
that's my
the
job.
yeah, no, yeah, that's a great idea too, just putting everyone together. What does the graduate assistantship application process look like?
Ooh, there's a job description and it's available on the website,
It
and you just
is,
apply.
yeah, so it's just like
Yeah.
applying for the job. So if you go to commonwealthu.edu/grad studies, scroll down about halfway, you're going to see like a big box with a picture of a student.
I don't know that ours are posted yet for the fall. I know they've been
Oh, okay.
approved, like through the administration, they've been approved. I don't know that they've been posted, but I also haven't looked. So,
Yeah, so I manage that page. I don't believe it's
okay.
there yet. However, as our GAs, including the one, the GAs in Dr. Lally's program become available, that's the first place they would go. And again, you would apply for it just like you would for a job. Where, you'd submit a resume and, typically there's an interview. Every GA process can sometimes be a little bit different. But all the details are available there on our GA website. There's probably not a lot listed right now. Typically, February, March is when we'll start to have a lot more of our positions posted, but that is a very good question.
I will say too, a lot of times I do get emails and stuff from students with questions that could be answered by our this session, well, because we already have an information session recorded on there, we're going to update it with this one. But there's also a second one about the CMPC. So, because I'm seeing questions about setting up a virtual meeting, I say I'm totally happy to do that. But make sure that you watch those two videos first, because the odd time I'll get on a phone call with a student who doesn't really have any questions, and I'll be like, okay, or they'll ask me questions that they could have answered by watching the video. So just do those first, and then if you still have questions, yeah, set up a meeting time.
And one of the things I always try to do as well is when I'm editing the videos, I always timestamp them. So if there's a certain subject, you want to learn more about, it's like, oh, let me just jump to that. So that way that, even just looking at the timestamps, maybe one of the ways like, oh, they talked about this subject here. Cool. That's really what I need to know about. But those are all the CMPC virtual session is available on the web. And then this version of our virtual session will be available probably by the end of the week. Do we have any other questions? And as the group is thinking about that, Dr. Lally, do you have any parting advice that you wanted to provide for anyone who's considering the program before we log off?
I would say apply early and be patient only because I only have so many spots, but be patient. If you have questions, feel free to email me. And I would say too, not that I necessarily have a huge inbox already, but I would say if you're not sure, like sports psychology or counseling, which direction I should go, and that's a question I get asked all the time. I have an undergrad degree in psychology, and I finished my senior year, and I was like, I don't want to do this. And I did not know what I was going to do. And then I found sports psychology, which at the time when I was graduating, wasn't really well known. And I was able to put two things that I really loved together. So I know that sometimes making these choices is really hard. So I'm happy to speak to you, even if it's you decide not to come to our program or you want to speak to students in our program. So I had a prospective student the other day who said, I'd really like to talk to some students because I work full time and have kids and I want to understand the part-time process. I'm like, oh, here. And I just, emailed a few of the students in our program who I knew were going part-time and had full-time jobs and kids. And, what was awesome is those two students responded like within half an hour, like, yeah, here's my number, just call me whenever you want. Even if you're not sure, feel free to reach out because I think it's an important question about what you want to do next.
All right. I think that brings us to the end of the event. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, whether you're watching live or watching the recording. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Certainly look forward to hearing everybody in the future, and I hope you have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.